Welcome to another episode of The Breakdown. One of the big problems that's going on in the province of Alberta, almost at a scale that we've never seen before, which is really quite fascinating because we had Jason Kenney and we had the Mats and we had all of the issues managers. We've seen a drop off in the issues managers, but somehow we've seen an increase in, I believe, what is technically called the bullshit. Um, and it's a lot harder for people to get accurate information. It's a lot harder for people to get consistent information, especially when we've got the Premier of Alberta changing her position and misspeaking on an almost daily basis. Our guest today is somebody who's looking to maybe address some of that, maybe shovel away some of that aforementioned bullshit. We've had him on the show before. We're very excited to welcome back to the show, Mr. David Gray. David, how are you doing today?
Doing well, Nate. Thanks for having me on.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on, sir. Now, just for anybody who may not have heard your previous episode with us, where we talked about the electricity situation and all of that, we'll get into that probably a little bit later because I want to revisit it as repetition. But for anybody who's not familiar with you, you've got quite an extensive history in Alberta, not only from a policy technical standpoint, but also from being engaged in politics. So for anybody who is not familiar with the David Gray, who is David Gray?
Dave Gray, for most people online, is the guy who yaks about electricity the most. I'm the most upset about it because I know what it should be like. I ran the office of the Utilities Consumer Advocate through most of the knots, and was involved in every hearing for every utility in Alberta and around for when they laid the basis for most of the problems that we're having now. Like a number of other people in industry who objected to the things that the Tory government wanted to do at the time, like the transmission policy, I was pushed out. Um, but the problems with electricity have just gotten worse since. And so I've ended up having to speak out because I know what's being said to be untrue. And it got me to the place I can't be the only one. I can't be the only person who knows about, forestry or knows about agriculture or water or any of the things that should concern us as a public matter, that can't be feeling the same sort of thing. And so it felt to me like we needed to take hold of the expertise that's maybe just recently gone from government, grab a hold of it and try and use it to do something that more and more jurisdictions are finding to be important, which is to combat misinformation, disinformation, and the technical term you used before, bullshit. It is a technical term. A lie is a mistruth told for gain. Bullshit is just a mistruth made up for fun.
Okay. So now I want to talk about this new project of yours and we're going to get into it. But I also think that it's fascinating that this is a project that you're taking up at a time when we have this premier that you have a little bit of history with. So if you wouldn't mind just talking about sort of your political history for a little bit, just to make sure that people have the full context of the conversation that we're going to have today.
Sure. I was a red Tory, campaigned for PC candidates, during the Klein era and after, but was very, very dissatisfied with what had happened, to electricity once they'd gotten rid of myself and everyone else once I could talk. And so I spent a summer being on the front page of the newspaper, I think more often than the premier, Stelmach at the time, talking about how badly they had misdone electricity, which hasn't changed. At that time, Danielle Smith was just starting her Wild Rose Leadership campaign. And we talked about me helping her with electricity policy on that campaign. And so I did. I helped her on her campaign for leadership. She got elected and I was on the Wild Rose as an advisor on electricity for quite a while. And then right at the very end, before things went catastrophically wrong and the floor crossing and all that, I was elected to the board of directors of the Wild Rose. So um, to my mind, at that point, we needed an alternative to the very bad policy decisions of the Tories. You know, again, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because, like, one of the things I think is important for the context is, you got involved with the Wild Rose back in the day because you were looking for something that perhaps, and if I'm putting words in your mouth here, I apologize, but it's something that perhaps had a little bit more integrity, something that was maybe a little bit less grifty. And
It was grifty, and it was not in the interests of consumers. Um, I come from public utilities, right? Public utilities, you pride yourself on delivering a good service at a reasonable rate, fair value. That's the antithesis of the ethos of the Alberta electricity industry. It's rapacious. It is ungoverned and rapacious, and everyone can feel it. You see it in your electricity bill. They're taking an extra 2 to 2.5 billion, not million, billion dollars a month out of the Alberta economy, going to profits beyond what they should be getting to electricity companies generating in our market. And they do it, as you so kindly pointed out, or neatly pointed out, because they can.
they can, because the provincial government has allowed them to create a system where they're allowed to do that. So that's
They
fun.
have a mechanism called economic withholding, which is a form of using your market power, the amount of the percentage of the market that you hold, in order to drive up prices by having control of the price stack. In any other jurisdiction, it's an illegal practice. Here, it's been going on for 3 years now at $2 billion plus a month.
There we go.
It's just
Okay.
insane. All the things they're talking about, all the concerns about, your prices are going to quadruple, and you're going to be risking blackouts in 2035 because of Trudeau, are happening now. We had 10 warnings last winter because of this stupid policy of these guys. That's just, it's stealing everybody's Christmas, and it's got to stop. But that's political, and we need to go a level up from that if we're going to solve this problem. So why don't we jump into talking about the Citizens Research Forum?
I was going to use that as a seg because one of the challenges that I think has happened in the conversation around the economic withholding and why the power bills are so high is because there's some concepts that are at play that are poorly understood by the vast majority of people, I'll say.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're launching a project to try to not only make sure that people understand some of these more complex issues, but also to address a whole bunch of other issues. And that brings us to, and I hope I'm getting the name right, the Citizens Research Forum.
Correct. CRF.
Perfect. So let's talk about that. What is, at the broad strokes, at the high levels, what is the Citizens Research Forum? Is it like the WEF, or is this a different thing?
As an economist for my entire career, I wish that it had been anywhere near as exciting as they allege. It's mostly spreadsheets. The the problem we have with politics gets summed up very nicely by a quote from um, Mr. Munger, Charlie Munger, vice chair of Berkshire Hathaway. Tell me a man's incentives, and I will tell you what he will do. The incentives for political parties are very unilateral. They are to get reelected by whatever means. And the problem that we're facing is that increasingly those means are not factual, they're divisive, And they're meant to be both those things as a constant stream in order to overwhelm the information space of any reasonable person. My goal with the Citizens Research Forum is to create a space where a reasonable person can easily find the information they need to make informed decisions on important matters of public policy. It's to try and create a Reader's Digest version of the scenario that we're facing or may face and the options that would be available to us.
Now, when you say Reader's Digest, I mean, you're talking about some, when we chatted earlier, you were talking about some reasonably technical issues. So is when you say Reader's Digest, is this information that's designed to be released in such a way that the average, air quoting the hell out of that for the audio listeners, Albertan will be able to digest and understand?
My big, hairy, audacious goal that I need as many people as possible to help us with is to make that possible for every single law in the books, that an ordinary person can understand what they say, what the implications are, and have the material they need to understand not just the what, but the why. Because that's what gets lost a lot of the time in these easily polarizable black and white issues, is that nothing in life is that simple. Nothing in life is black and white. It can be very complicated. If it is black and white, it might be a 5-minute cheese sequence, and we've lost a space in which reasonable people from different backgrounds can come together to talk about these things, right? All we do is yell about them. There's a psychologist that I've been looking at who studies the differences between the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere and the role of us as people in the world. And he notes that politics has become very much a right hemisphere thing, which is I don't know if I got that right. It's the immediate reaction. It's short thinking. It's instinctive thinking. It's not contemplation of what are the options. It's how do I feel about that right now, damn it. And that's the easiest kind of message to sell for politics, particularly in the wild, wild west of the internet, right, where there's essentially no broadcast standards. We're seeing the same pathological phenomenon of propaganda that people saw in other epochs, applied to us. The shit works. They know how to do it. It's not a complicated formula. You repeat lies daily until they're believed, and until your tribe's belief in them is a rite of passage. And so my idea is let's leave all that behind. Let's go do our homework to ensure that we're basing our analysis on the closest to the truth that we can get in any particular instance, and then look at what the options are without judgment as to which one is best. Just laying out what's the evidence, what's the best case for, what's the best case against each of these things that we're thinking of doing.
So, like, let me throw an example at you to see if I'm understanding the concept properly. I was listening to a podcast recently where the executive director of Take Back Alberta was espousing on equalization, and he was talking about how Alberta makes equalization payments to the federal government, which is patently false. Everybody pays the same income tax. The equalization program comes out of general revenue. It's a poorly and it was fascinating to me that Mr. Parker, who claims to be the foremost expert on politics in the province of Alberta, that's a claim he makes, doesn't understand a program that is so fundamental to the discussion about federalism between Alberta and the rest of Canada. He doesn't even understand how the program of equalization works.
He may
What's that?
very well, but he has no incentive to tell that story. See, that's what people don't get.
So,
We're not
so
logical. We're
he's
not
either
logical
stupid or a
creatures.
liar.
We're story creatures. We are the most powerful species on the planet because we do something that no other species does, which is to mass mobilize in a flexible way. And we do that based on following the stories that we believe, right? The stories sent people to the Crusades, right? The the problem that we're fundamentally facing is that fictions are often better, more transmissible stories than the truth, because the truth is fuzzy and messy. And if you really understand it, you understand also what you can't understand, right? There's a very great difference between knowledge and understanding that a lot of people don't understand. If we can get one of those, sound effects in there, but it's true, right? I have people coming at me all day with a sliver of knowledge about electricity and not the slightest bit of understanding of why things are the way they are.
So, is part of the goal of the Citizens Research Forum to provide a space where if somebody is like, oh, I keep hearing about all of this equalization stuff,
Mhm.
and I'm just as one topic as an example, where they could go and they could learn about how equalization works in a digestible way?
Mhm.
Is it going to be a variety of topics? What do you have in mind here?
It's the compendium of topics. I hope that we can create a separate research study group for 30 areas. I'm going on the basis of there's about 20 departments in government. On top of that, I expect there to be about 10 sort of broad societal areas that we would want to look at, with the notion that we go and gather as much, intelligence as we can to boil down to a digest of options and evidence to be useful to our fellow citizens in making voting decisions. Part of that has got to be right away to ensure that we know which candidates are affiliated with particular movements. I mean, Take Back Alberta trying to take over all of the school boards in the province should pester anyone. And just to prove that, instead of saying Take Back Alberta, let's say the Calgary Chamber of Commerce. If the Calgary Chamber of Commerce was trying to place candidates on every school board in Alberta, I would be concerned and would want to know about that before I voted for my local school board. I see that with, say 100 volunteers so we can cover every riding, being pretty easily and quickly achievable. And then moving on to organize the rest of the society. I'm hoping we can get as much help um, as might be wished to get some people who are smart in the, I'll call it the back end part of maintaining a list of people and organizations and workflows and computers, hosting space, all the things that we need. But it doesn't, that part I don't think will be that hard. The hard part will be convincing people to help us do the homework of democracy, because that's what we need to do. The good news is I don't think we need everybody to do it. My experience is if we just concentrate on the people that know things, we can probably get it done fairly efficiently.
So, I mean, there's a couple of questions that I have to ask because I know that they're probably percolating in the heads of anybody who's listening to this or watching this right now. But one of the big questions has to be, um, how are you going to ensure the objectivity of the information that the Citizens Research Forum is going to be presenting? I mean, I can think of an organization that rhymes with Blue Sorth that they're a charitable organization
Mm-hmm.
defying all reason, but they are, and they claim that they're presenting fair and balanced and unbiased, and I'm air quoting again. And anybody who looks at True North's content objectively can go, "Oh, that's none of those things."
Mhm.
So, but there are people who believe that organizations like True North or some other ones are objective. They are factual.
Well, that's the problem, and there's no direct way to deal with that. As Mark Twain said, it's easier to fool a man than convince him he's been fooled. I don't want to try and convince them they've been fooled. I want to go to a different place where we can apply standards that one would normally apply to collecting evidence in any either judicial or academic setting, right? People think that we have no way to get to the truth. Well, that's hogwash. We do it every day. I mean, there's courts and tribunals that are testing facts every day. We know how to do it. I mean, that's not hard. What we need to do then is collect them into some usable form, and with the context that goes around them, and hopefully, please, people with expertise and knowledge to step forward and help us sort through the complexities of these things so that the ordinary guy can get it. I think of my friend Bob, who's an IT guy, brilliant in IT. Um, and he's very curious about how all these things work, but he doesn't have the background in, forestry or, any of the other things that might come up. But he'd like to know that there's some place where he could go where he's not going to get conned. Um, I my vision for this thing is that it's nonpartisan and everyone's going to be invited. But the purpose of this thing is not to decide what's right or wrong. The purpose of the thing is to decide what's true, and then what is the evidence for and against the proposals that are on the table, the options that confront us. And I think we can do something even more. So I'm inspired by a guy probably people in town know, a fellow named Len Karakanich, who pulled out a thing on me one day when we were having great trouble. He said, when you have a breakdown, try and make a breakthrough. I think we're at a breakdown. I think we're at a place where we can't agree on what color the sky is, and that's a very bad place to be. It's very difficult to make smart decisions from that place. And so let's make a breakthrough. And so the bigger, hairier, more audacious goal that I have with this group of new friends that I'm about to make is to look every 2 years at publishing a 100 year ahead look at what risks we face, what things are going to look like, what sort of resources are we going to need, what opportunities, threats. Do that every 2 years, looking ahead 100 years. So we're just way outside of the political cycle. And I'm hoping that by doing those two things, focusing not on which is right, which is wrong, but on what's the evidence. And also looking ahead instead of looking back, that we can engage everyone who's got ideas and information to bring to the table so that we can be smarter, right? There's an old saying that a well-organized group is smarter than its smartest participant. And I firmly believe that to be true. One of the skills that I've got is organizing groups. And so I need to get this idea out there and see if we can make it work. Something that's nonpartisan, but policy oriented, useful to our fellow citizens, and beneficial in trying to bring us together to solve everybody's problems. I would really like to understand better what it is in rural Alberta that makes them hate green energy. Like I would like to understand that. There's got to be something there that I'm missing because it doesn't make any sense to me. But we can't have that conversation now I just have to lecture on communism and how it wasn't really a thing, again and again and again, right? Like there's got to be a better way. We need to
I,
build a different bar that has a different vibe and break out the beer nuts and see what we can't do together because we're not going to win apart.
I don't I don't disagree with anything you said there. I would be happy to argue that there's a lot of people in rural Alberta that are actually huge fans of green energy. I think that there's just a is it too often the case, a vocal minority that's dominating the conversation. But I want to get to the ask, because this is the sort of the crux of our conversation today. You've got this idea. You've got some. You got a website you're launching. You've got some domain names affiliated with that website that I believe you did not pay $1,900 for. I could be wrong. I'm just speculating. That's a
90 cents. I have the receipt.
There you go. That's an
I
Alberta
had a credit.
pension plan joke. But so what is it that you're looking for? What is it that you need in order to make this project something that people can go to get objective, evidence-based information that's accessible? What do you need to make that happen?
I need advice. I need connections, and I need help. We're the ultimate structure that I'm envisioning is that we have a research chair in each of these research tables that we're setting up, who knows things and knows people. And he can select people to be on his research board directorship. Um, Below that, there will be all the people who are interested in researching, seeing what they're doing in other parts of the world, making sure the numbers we've got are solid, looking for research papers, trying to find experts, all the things that we could do if we were looking at sort of finding the state of the art of anything in the world. What's critical in what all I just said is that the people that I want running the top aren't elected. I don't want people that are selected because they're popular. I want people who are elected because they're knowledgeable, and I don't care if they're curmudgeonly. Otherwise, I disqualify myself.
So is your
I need somebody. I do want there to be an elected group that elects or selects those people. So my envisioning is that ultimately this will be a society or a not-for-profit group that has elected executive board, president, treasurer, etc., that has authority over money matters and can organize an office of executive power, however they need it to be. But with the notion, we elect those people amongst us, and they elect the people that run the chairs, because it's so much easier for people who understand things to say, no, this is what we need. These are the choices that confront us. And I think what will get to be really interesting is when we've got all of these things running, and in parallel run some sort of an economics forecasting unit or a strategic planning unit to develop scenarios on which we're going to test all of these different sectors to see what happens. That the cross-pollination may actually give us solutions we've never thought of. I mean, the thing I've studied most since getting out of utilities has been psychological economics, right? What makes people make decisions. And there are a lot of opportunities, I think, for us to solve problems that are costing us millions of dollars just by putting up the right sign. There's so much that we could do together. And that kind of leads me to my inspiration, which was my grandfather. I never met the man, and there's only a few photographs of him. He was a craggy farmer. He and my great grandfather settled the land north of Stoughton, Saskatchewan, in the winter of, I think, 1900. They lived in a sod shack for a couple of years to break the land, and then built a house built by Mr. Poole, who went on to do a few things with his construction company. He came from my hometown. Um, what he did was to say, all right, community members, we need a doctor. Give us $5. We're all going to get $5 into the pot. We can, put together $300, and that's enough to get a doctor over here from England. And that's what they did. It was rational and cooperative, right? They didn't wait for government to help them. They organized themselves and did what needed to be done. I'd like to see us do that again. What needs to be done is we need to find a way to talk about important things without it being, just feces flinging across the fence from political parties that are not attracting our best and brightest, right? We need to
I
be
think it's,
smarter.
I think it's fascinating, Mark, because one of the things that I think we see splitting a lot of political movements, whether we're talking about, I mean, organizations like Take Back Alberta, whether we're talking about political parties, is that people feel the need that they have to be able to get together on almost everything. And if people disagree, you can agree on 70%, but if there's that 30% that you disagree on, everybody says, screw this, I'm taking my ball and going home. It sounds like what you're proposing is if there's 70% that we agree on, let's just talk about that 70% and see what we can do there. Am I reading that right?
No, no, I'm saying you don't even need to do that. I'm saying all you need to do is to say, for example, CPP. Um, to the best evidence we can find with our group of knowledgeable people we've had looking this over, these are the estimates that you should see. The advantages of leaving CPP are X, Y, and Z. These are the best arguments we found to create a steel dog for any given policy position. These are the best arguments we found against that position. And the same for creating an Alberta pension plan or whatever the options are before us. You can do that without having to make any judgment, without having to gore or tolerate the goring of your political ox, right? It's just an exercise, and these are the facts, Jack. Right? This is what we know. This is what we can know. This is the best evidence we've got. However, what we will then allow is for the people who are involved or signed up to get our emails to vote. With my hope being that we grow this large enough and across as many, geographic and political boundaries as possible, that we have the best polling on any issue in the province, and that politics will follow the will of the people, well informed.
That's the key right there, is the well informed piece, because Lord knows, um, it's the line that I use over and over again. But the foundation of any healthy democracy is a well informed electorate, and I think part of the problem that we have in this province right now is that we have people on all sides of the political spectrum who are more than happy to go out of their way to make sure that people aren't well informed.
Oh yes, well it's again, it gets back to the cheapest and easiest soap powder to sell is division and hatred. I mean, it sells like gangbusters. It's its own best commercial, right? Oh, everybody's adrenaline gets going. It's not hard to do that, and unfortunately, we're in a situation where you can do that and win enough of the vote to win power. Um, but it's it ultimately plays itself out to hurt everybody. It's stupid in the technical definition of stupid, which is to do something to hurt someone else that also hurts yourself. We have a lot of that going on, and it's got to stop. And so for my part, I'm going to continue to speak out about the part I know about. And I hope that people buy into the notion that we need a better space. We don't need to accept that the hate amplifying echo chambers of the billionaires and their fever dreams and rocket ships needs to guide our society. We can bloody well choose for ourselves what to do as a community. And as a community, nothing can stop us and stand in our way. So I've, decided that the best thing to do is to roll up my sleeves and put my strength of arm and heart and brain into trying to get us above the level of politics so we can solve the problems of our society.
So what are you asking for from people then? So if somebody's listening to the show today, or they're watching the show today, and they're like, "Hey, that sounds like a really good idea. I think maybe having some objective information that doesn't have political bias or spin is that sounds like it makes a lot of sense." What are those? If that person's an economist, or if they're a law student, or if they're a political science student, or if they're a plumber, or if they're an electrician, or what do these people need to know about what you're looking for and how to get in touch with you?
I will be setting up the website so that people can get on the list with what they want to do. I can tell you that in the immediate, for the first couple of months, it's finding people that are skilled in developing charters, governance structures, ensuring that we've got things set up in a reasonable way, and to start to get the feelers out to people who might be interested in being an area chairperson or on a board. I'm looking for people that can volunteer with both intent and ability, right? On the back end side of that, we're going to need people who can help us with the IT part of it and managing large lists and actioning on them. I know there's some of those people out there. And then the last part of it will be to get the people that are, interested in politics from both sides, right? That want to have the serious debates, helping us build this thing, because I want partisans involved in this too, as much as anybody, or maybe even more, because I want them to see the perspectives that other people are sharing unavoidably.
Okay. And when we're
And
talking,
in terms of what I need for people to help, I'm going to
yeah,
look for 10 people the next week that can help me round up the rest.
there we go. Okay. So, um, in
When I
regard,
put this suit on, I forget to talk short and sharp. But it's important for me to put the suit on. And you might ask, why did you take off the hoodie, Dave? We like the hoodie. Well, the reason is that I am reaching out to other people I know who still wear this uniform. People who are judges, people who are lawyers, people who are accountants, engineers, heads of companies, men of industry, labor organizers, people that know things. Let's get together, share our knowledge, share it with everyone so that we can be most useful. And instead of bickering, solve our problems. I think it was noted. I tossed out something that I stole from a behavioral economist, that you can argue, you can win an argument, or you can solve a problem. They are two very different processes. We all know about arguments and how easy they are to win, especially when you can yell, swear and stomp your feet, tip the board over and go. It's a lot harder to solve the problem, but also a lot more valuable. So, I'm on behalf of my grandpa urging you to help join this community, and let's put our efforts together to try and make it all better.
okay. So just to be clear, I mean, I totally understand that you're looking for the experts and the expertise and all of that. But if somebody is maybe listening to this and thinking to themselves, "Oh, I'm not an economist,"
Let's
or
say let's say you're a farmer.
there
So
we go.
farmer, and you want to be involved in the discussion on agricultural policy. Once we've got it organized, you'll be very welcome to join on agricultural policy. And my suggestion to people is going to be actually join on something that you've never been part of before, because perhaps you know something that would be useful, right? And I think everyone can join in that exercise. And if we do it right, what we end up doing is increasing our options, right? Taking smarter action now that gives us options in the future, and just increasing the solution space that's available by getting more people involved and trying to solve problems. And I
Okay.
think that's cool, but I'm pretty nerdy.
Well, I think it sounds pretty cool too. If people want to do that, if they want to sign up, like I guess the
I will
question.
put a general mailing list on the website for them to sign up to, but with the caveat that we're probably not going to get back to them until we've got our poop in a group.
Okay.
Right. From this podcast until 10 days, 2 weeks from now. I'll keep people updated, but I'll right now headhunting for people that can help test the ideas that I've got, make sure they're going to work, and then help us nail down what resources we need to track and then track them down.
Okay. The obvious question has to be, what's the website? Where do people find you?
It is citizensresearchforum.org.
There we go. Do you guys have the X? Do you have the Facebooks? Do you have any of those things running up yet? Or
Sure.
okay, there we
No.
go. Okay, so
On behalf of future Dave, let me say yes. Yes, we do.
there we go. Okay. Well, I imagine by the time this goes to air on Wednesday, those things will be nailed down.
They're on my list. They are on my list, maybe.
There we go. So citizensresearchforum.org.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else you want people to know? Is there anything else you want people to hear?
Well, absolutely. If you're okay, I'd like to talk about the breakthrough.
Absolutely. You fill your boots, sir.
So I've greatly enjoyed talking with you, Nate, and watching the product that you put out day after day. In the hurly burly of politics, I wouldn't do that for all the love in the world. I don't want to do that. But going back to the notion of we've had a breakdown, let's make a breakthrough. I'm looking forward to creating a podcast in cooperation with you called The Breakthrough that's going to feature the people that we're bringing into this process, the experts in each of the fields to try and help us all understand things better. And looking for solutions, not arguments. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to the positive vibe that we can get to it. And I'll be honest, I'm looking forward to getting some of my redneck friends back. I mean, to be honest, they party like you just can't substitute it. And the fact that we've got politics driving a wedge between me and other country music fans is not something that I want to tolerate.
Yeah. No, I hear that. And we're looking forward to working with you on that. Because I think that that's exactly the kind of conversation that we like to have. And God knows we love to be involved with conversations with smart people. So I'm really looking forward to once you have your legs underneath you, building out the media empire, I think is what we were accused of being.
Well, it all gets to the same thing. And I'll touch on one of the things that comes up to me in sort of a very deeply philosophical way. We used to rely on Knowlton Nash. We could rely on Knowlton Nash and Lloyd Robertson to tell us something that we could all agree was, pretty close to the truth. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but we all agreed on it. Whether it was as the best could be done is a bit irrelevant to the effect that it had. That when we all agreed on what the truth is, it's a lot easier to compromise and come to agreement, right? I was wrong, you were right. Let's have a beer and figure this out, right? Now, when it's a rite of passage to believe the absurd, we end up with a real problem. If you believe the absurd, you can be made to commit atrocities. And I don't think people understand the important role that decorum plays in keeping half of us alive, right? We are a warlike species, and we need to rein that in order to do constructive things. And so that's the space that I hope with this podcast and with this initiative, the forum, that we can carve out. I think it'll make it better. And my ultimate vision for this is that if you want to have a serious conversation about issues, you have to be on the forum, and if you're on the forum, you have to behave. I intend to invite children as young as grade 9. I think grade 9 students would be a fantastic resource for us all, finding resources from around the world that we haven't thought of or ideas we haven't thought of. And so, yeah, we will make sure to enforce decorum at all times. Twitter's where you can, bang with your elbows if you want. But
I love the idea that this will be sort of a pan Albertan approach, because I mean, as somebody who grew up in rural Alberta and now lives in one of the big cities, the watching that schism grow and watching the animosity grow has been really unsettling, because some of the folks that were most influential on me becoming the person who I am today are from rural Alberta. And when we see urban Alberta denigrating rural Alberta, there's a part of me that gets my hackles up. And on the
yeah,
converse,
I'm
yeah,
sorry about that.
well, no, it's not.
I,
There are for sure.
I grew up on the farm. Like,
Yeah,
I'm a farm boy.
there are rednecks and bigots and ignorant people who exist in rural Alberta. They also exist in urban Alberta. And I think that we have the conversations with the people who are willing to have conversations in good faith and recognize when they may have factual errors that may require adjustment, that's where I think that we can really pull forward as a province. Because one of the things that I'm deeply concerned with is that the modeling that's being done with the rhetoric that we're seeing from our leadership is not based on any of those principles. I mean, you take a look at even just Danielle Smith's behavior over the last week and a half, and she's just lying about things again. And she's doing a lot of revisionist history. I mean, and the willingness to, I take a look at the whole campaign that's going on around the Alberta pension plan, and she's on one hand acknowledging that the numbers that she's presenting to Albertans are not the final numbers and they're not the accurate numbers, but at the same time she's also saying no, those are the final numbers. And it's been fascinating to watch journalists and pundits and commentators try to make sense of how she can hold these two positions at different times, but within the same day, and switch back and forth from them. And I think what that
Depending
does,
on the audience.
yeah, I think what that does is it says to people who are looking at the premier of the province, this is how you conduct business. This is how you have conversations. This is how you have debates. And unfortunately, it's not. It's how you destroy all of those things. And I think having some rules of engagement, and the kinds of rules of engagement that you're talking about with the Citizens Research Forum, uh, the decorum, I think that's critically important, because I think there's a big difference between um, messing around on Twitter or X or whatever. I don't interact with people on Facebook because they're all horrible. Um, but I think there's a big difference between that and trying to have a serious conversation. And I think that it's important to highlight that you can have more than one gear.
Mm-hmm. There are more than one options to any problem that you face. There are always many ways to skin a cat, each with its pluses and minuses. To think that there's only one solution and only one party can be right is inane, not insane, inane. Um, from a personal perspective, I've got a $2,500 two-neck steel guitar sitting behind me that I've been practicing on diligently. And unless we can heal this great divide that we've developed in our province, I will have little opportunity to play it. And that really ticks me off.
A two-neck steel guitar.
Oh, yeah, it's a beauty.
That's a lot of guitar you got going
E9
on.
C11,
That's a
baby.
very, very niche guitar too. For all of the musicians in the audience who are listening to this, they're probably going, "Wait, what? Two neck steel?"
It's no, it's a standard steel you see on country records, right? It's a steel guitar played with. Let me get that unblurred because it unnecessary censorship on that looks very very bad. But it's a steel guitar you play with a slide and pedals, right? It's pedal steel.
Yeah,
But it's a very expensive guitar that was gifted to us, and I put some time into understanding the complicated nature of the device. And unless I can, book some country and western gigs, I'm in big, big trouble.
there you go. It's one of I'm a big fan of that instrument just because I 5 days in May, 5 days in July is one of my. I always do the song and then I'm like, no, that's not what they called the album. Is one of my favorite albums of all time, and the steel guitar that they have on that is very good.
Yes, Daniel Lanois is also a master. Anyway, my hope is that we can all get back to honky tonkin again, and that we, can get around the problem of having to fight to get heard by just cooperating on collecting the evidence and the truth as best we can find it together, and then not judging. Right, it's up to every voter what they want to do once they have that information. I just want to make it easy for them to find.
Well, I think that's awesome because I think we would all do better if we were focused on the pursuit of truth as opposed to the pursuit of being right. I think that's where a lot of our conversations get derailed.
You can be right or you can be successful.
There you go. Anything else that you want people to hear? Anything else that you'd like people to know about the Citizens Research Forum?
I am looking forward to working with all the people that are going to step up and volunteer. I know from past things that we've done that there's going to be a lot, and I apologize in advance for whatever slip ups we make and getting back to you in the first little while. But my heart's in this for the right reason. I don't want politics to divide us. I want us to, be clear eyed and sober minded about what the future might bring. And, we can make our choices from there as to which party we want to support. But let's make sure that they can't snow us. I think I used that line on you before, Ryan, that if you plow the snow, you can say where the road goes. From my days up north. And really that's what I want to do is I want to plow the snow between the average guy who's trying to make up his mind in a reasonable way about politics and the best information that's out there.
Mr. Gray, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to chat today.
Thanks for your support on this, Ryan. We'll be busy boys.
I'm not Ryan though.
Oh, no, Nathan.
I can do a really good Ryan though.
Oh, I'm sorry, my friend. Oh, sorry. My mind's been in writing and charters and all that sort of stuff.
I have no problem at all, and that gave me an excuse to throw out my Jesperson impression. So I'm happy with that because I've been
Mr.
working.
Mr. Pike, I apologize. It will not happen again, and it's a very good example. When corrected, I adjust.
See, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I mean, there's a few folks in the podcasting space when it comes to politics, when it comes to these sorts of initiatives. So I'm not at all. I mean, here's the thing. There's obviously some differences between myself and Mr. Jesperson. One of them being his success, but. I think that he does some important things in having the conversation. So getting mistaken for for that, I could do a whole lot worse. At least you weren't like
I
uh Dave Parker. Like if you'd called me Mr. Parker, then I would have been like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I don't have a beard like that.
I apologize from the bottom of my heart, Mr. Nate Pike. I for confusing you with the number one podcast in Canada.
Is he the
But
number one?
he's up there. He was doing pretty good. But and I do appreciate what Ryan does because again, he is trying to get the uncomfortable as it might be. He's trying to get those conversations to happen between people who don't want to converse. But I would like to say that we don't really have a first past the post electoral system here now. We have a first past the Parker,
You
and
know,
that's a problem.
hey, do me a favor. If you go on the Jesperson show one to talk about the Citizens Research Forum, if you go on the Real Talk, make the mistake of calling him Nate just once.
I'll do my best. Do
Awesome.
my best. I got to say, when you're in the moment of trying to present, lots and lots of stewing and thinking. I get easily confused.
You know what? The important thing is the spirit of the conversation that you're trying to have and the points that you're trying to make. And I think that, this is one of the reasons why I'm excited to partner with you for the breakthrough once that thing starts to get to a place where it can start to be produced, because I think that those are going to be a very different but very important conversation as well.
I think it's going to introduce a lot of people to the real world, which is not neat and tidy. It's very complicated, and there are lots of options. There are lots of unknowns. And talking with smart people about that, you'll find out what you can know. There are things we can't know because there are just no facts about the future. But we can still look at what they might be and plan for them, which is the smart thing to do.
There we
So
go.
that's what I'm hoping. We've tried, organizing people who don't like experts. Let's try organizing experts. I think the result might be a little better.
There we go. I got to say,
Maybe.
I'm a little disappointed that Mr. Jesperson got rid of trash talk, because I had my trash talk impersonation down. It was so good.
Well, has he got it copyrighted?
I don't want to be derivative. That's lazy.
Fair enough, sir. I appreciate that.
Awesome. Mr.
All
Great,
right,
thank you
Nate.
for taking the time to
Thanks.
chat today.
Apologize again, and thanks for your.
All good. All right. Talk soon.
Bye now.
And that's it for another episode of The Breakdown. As always, if you appreciate the kind of content that we're trying to produce here, we would love nothing more than if you thought about signing up to be one of our Patreon sponsors at www.patreon.com/thebreakdownab, where for just the price of a fancy cup of coffee a month, you can help us continue to produce this kind of content. Whether you're listening to the audio version of the podcast, in which case, maybe leave a review and a rating, or whether you're watching it on one of our streaming platforms, we want to say a big thank you to everybody who is part of the Breakdowns audience. And as always, take care of each other and keep the conversation going.